end? Do we feel, she looks out the window at life going on? Are we optimistic? How do you, I mean, I felt optimistic a little bit.
Well, the point about any film or anything you read, you, the audience, have to interpret it. Without you interpreting it, even if you don't like it, the act isn't complete. I can't tell you what you should feel about Hester. I can only tell you what my intention was. And my intention was that because she sees Mrs. Elton and her husband, who are clearly in love, but it's not sentimental. I mean, Mrs. Elton says, you know, a lot of rubbish talked about love. It's wiping someone's arse and keeping, you know, the dignity. Suicide, no one's worth it. She only half hears it, but it drops something into her consciousness, so that when she decides that she'll let Freddie go, and I think then achieves true love, the idea was that she then decides to live. There's a moment where she thinks, when she turns on the gas fire, should I light it? And she decides to do so. That tiny act, it's only tiny, but for me, it's heroic. And I would like people to think, well, despite what the future might be, however bleak, she had the courage to go on. And I am enormously moved by that, because my mother had a terrible life with my father until 1952. He was an absolute bastard. And she was stoic, not in the old Greek sense, but in the modern sense of, well, that's what I was dealt. Those were my cards, I'll carry on. And never once did she complain, never. She was never bitter at all. And I was bitter against my father for a long time. And someone said something that was really important. Said, if you can't forgive, you will never change the past. I thought, my God, that's true. And on one day, I don't know where it came from, I thought, I don't hate him anymore. Don't love him, I'm glad he's dead. But I don't hate him anymore, because what happens within you, it's corrosive. It corrodes you. And I thought, actually, he's not worth it. He's just not worth it. What's in my heart is my mother. And she was a wonderful woman, full of love. And that's much more important. As Philip Larkin says, what will survive of us is love.
I just want to say, it's not a question, but just before I came here, I wanted to check how long the movie was. And I'm always extremely pleased when the movie is not 2.5 hours. So I really, even if it's bad, it's only an hour and a half, I don't care, right? So it's, and that it was a great movie makes it even better.
But look at all the great films that have been made. They're all usually 1.5, 1 3/4 hours. It's the perfect length. You know, once you get to 2 hours, you're really in dangerous territory. Over 2 hours, you know, I don't think there's anyone alive now that can sustain interest for that length of time. There just isn't. What's his name? The Greek director who's just died. Yeah, Angelopoulos. Thank you. He can do it, but you know, not even Tarkovsky could do it. I mean, sitting through. I think Stalker is his greatest work, but I mean, sitting through The Sacrifice, you lose the will to live. Well, I've written 4. Whether anyone will actually fund them, God alone knows. I'm scheduled to do Uncle Vanya for the London stage, because I love Chekhov, and that's my favourite of all the Chekhov plays. I think that's his absolute masterpiece. I've done an adaptation of an Ed McBain novel, which is a very unusual little novel. There's a wonderful Scottish novel called Sunset Song, which is set just before, during and after the First World War in Aberdeenshire. And the one that I really would love to make. I've written an original screenplay on Emily Dickinson, because I think she's your greatest poet. I reason earth is short, and anguish absolute, and many hurt. But what of that? I reason we could die. The best vitality cannot excel decay. But what of that? I reason that in heaven somehow it will be even, some new equation given. But what of that? Isn't that a glorious poem?
In light of all the silences between parts of dialogue, I was wondering if you talk a little bit about your strategy in directing the actors, kind of what you told them to say, how to act, just a little bit about your style.
Well, it's something that has to be felt on a shot-by-shot basis. Once you know the meaning of the scene, you know, as I said before, you know where to put the camera. But the playing of those scenes, you have to say, no, look, play the pause. Sometimes it's played too long, sometimes played too fast. Sometimes you just let the camera rest on the actor or the actress, and they'll do things which are quite extraordinary that normally they wouldn't have done. Because what film does, it captures the fleeting moment. It captures the accent, as well as what goes on behind the eyes, and truth and falsity. It captures all those things, but it catches small details. And you can't direct those small details. Like when Tom Hiddleston takes his hat from the rack at the end, it only does it in three at the third attempt he takes it. Now, you can't direct that. That happens. And of course, you see that take and you just think, well, we've got to use it. You know, because it said more than what was originally meant, but it was felt. The two close-ups on her at the very end, you know, I mean, we're on her a long time, because she's trying to let him go. At first, you know, she wants to keep him just for that little bit longer, and she decides that she'll polish his shoes that don't need polishing. And when he says, you know, don't put the shoes on the table, she's got it back to the commissioners. It's bad luck, or so they say. She does it. And then you just play those. You play it really in the cutting room. That's when you find out a film's subtextual meaning. And very often you'll change the order a lot, or things will go in a different place than they were actually in the script. But that's trying to capture the moment and being free for that moment to allow anything to happen. And I find that absolutely thrilling, especially when people do things with lines that I hadn't thought of, and I've written them, for God's sake. You know, I hear them in my head, and then they'll do something different with it. You know, when William comes to see her, and she says, well, you know, thank you for coming. I said, and he said, please sit down, William. And he goes, well, at least I found you. It pierces your heart, because at that moment you know he still loves her. And he's embarrassed at saying it, but he's got to say it. And just prior to that, she says, the line is, an attempted suicide is against the law, isn't it? And she says, attempted suicide is against the law, isn't it? It's a rising inflection, when English is usually a falling inflection. But, oh, it's wonderful. I love that. And sometimes you just need to let them do it. Other times you need to really say, no, God, this is too much. It's acting, or, you know, that particular phrasing doesn't sound right. But very often you have to be in the moment. And that's incredibly exciting, because it can be a disaster as well. I mean, you know, it really can. But it's wonderful in the moment. And that's what film captures, the moment, that fleeting moment. And where you don't hear, sometimes you just have a close, you don't see anybody. The opening credits, just her voiceover and a ticking clock, that's all. But that's why it's powerful. You know, if you have a close-up of a man, close-up of a woman, and you put them together and put a ticking clock, what does it mean? Put those two close-ups together and you run a fire engine noise outside. What does it mean? It means something different, and all you've done is something tiny. But in film, that is powerful. So I'm sorry.
Please forgive me if I don't know the history of your work, but would you ever consider tackling a subject that's not British in nature, or maybe a period that where you didn't live through yourself?
Well, yes. I mean, if we get Sunset Song, it will be in the First World War. But I grew up on what was called the woman's pictures, you know, where the central character was a woman. All That Heaven Allows, Magnificent Obsession, and later on, Letter from an Unknown Woman, which is set in Vienna. So that is very much part of me, part of my psyche, and I love those films. From films made from about 1940 to the late 50s have the most wonderful glow for me, and I wish, in a sense, I'd lived then, because I possibly do feel happy with the past. I sort of know where I am. The modern world I'm afraid of. I'm complete technophobe. I can't use anything. If people leave messages on my mobile, they get a reply in 3 years' time. I'm completely hopeless. And as the world becomes more and more technologized, it seems to be almost a denial of life. And I feel more and more not part of it. And I don't think I could make a film about modern Britain, because what's going on in my country is pretty ugly. We're imploding as a country. And I don't want to know about people taking drugs and, having sex all the time. I just think there's something unutterably depressing about it. Where's the humanity? Where's the love? Where's the effort to make an effort for somebody else? But we're in an egocentric time. Everything revolves around the centre, and watching television, you really realise how that's true. Everyone talks, and everyone talks about what's right for them. You never hear anyone now thinking about other people and what might be the effect on them. It's all about me, and I hate that. Because when I was growing up, if you said that, what you get told, you get a slap and be told the world doesn't revolve around you. And I think in a way, parents who bring their children up in that way, they're actually abusing them, because one day they'll wake up and realise the world does not revolve around them, and they're in for a very big shock. So it's a kind of abuse, and I do miss simple things like politeness. I really, really do. But I'm now 66. I'm not funky and young. And if someone did send me a gangster film, I think, why are they sending it to me? If I did an action movie, it would be two cars going very, very slowly. And when I made my first feature, someone said, well, now you can embark on sex, drugs and rock and roll. I said, look, I'm celibate. I don't like rock and roll, and I'm too afraid to take drugs. What's left? Soft furnishings. It's not exciting. So I'm afraid I'm a bit of an old sort of pedant, really. I'm locked in the past, probably.